This buddy named Eric Ponte is the most incorrigible bully in school. The teachers believe that he is a real fiend and he has no future, but they just don't know what is really hidden under Eric's fighting character. Stockholm 50. At first glance, Eric lives in a very ordinary family. Everyone is sitting decorously at dinner, but if Eric takes a knife the wrong way and even more so drops it, Dad immediately slaps him in the face, and after the meal hits him on the back with a belt. Mom is afraid to say a word to her husband and drowns out the sounds of her son's beatings by playing the piano. It is not surprising that from such a life Eric became embittered and aggressive. He constantly arranges fights at school, and after another brawl, he is expelled from school. Returning home, Eric finds his mother talking to a lawyer, who hurriedly says goodbye to Mrs. Ponte and hands the guy a business card just in case. Mom stays alone with her son. She is unusually gentle with him, but informs him that he will have to go to boarding school today. Upon arrival, Eric is immediately met by a high school student, lanky Otto Silverhelm, who rides horses and generally looks like the best student at school. With exaggerated politeness, Otto shows the newcomer the territory, and then escorts him to the room. At parting, the young man says that Eric can always turn to him for help, because team spirit is especially appreciated at this school. Soon Eric meets his neighbor, Pierre, who likes to listen to jazz, read books, and study. He and Eric quickly find a common language, and the neighbor even offers the newcomer help with math classes. In the evening, Eric enters the dining room for the first time and notices that a strict hierarchy is observed in the seating of the students. Classmate Johan explains to him that in their school, the younger ones do not have the right to sit next to the older ones, and the less rich with the richer ones. Another neighbor of Eric suddenly asks what political views his father holds and gets a sharp and rude answer. The chairman of the student council, Otto, who recently was polite and courteous, asks Eric to get up from the table. For swearing, Dahlen sang along with him, takes a knife and hits the newcomer on the head as punishment. Local teachers also cannot be called examples of pedagogy. For example, a history teacher illustrates the superiority of some peoples over others with the help of his own students. He calls Eric to the blackboard, calling him a typical representative of the valiant German people, and humiliates his friend Pierre for the pronounced southern appearance of a frail Weezer. During lunch, Eric discusses the incident in history class with Johan and again expresses himself emotionally. Otto hears this. He demands that the newcomer come up and take the punishment. Eric refuses, and then the high school student sends him to stand in the corner for the underachievers. But the guy does not agree to this either, for which he receives another punishment. He is expelled from classes for a week. Life in the boarding school goes on as usual. Eric tries to channel his energy into peaceful channels, studying, communicating with Pierre in sports. He even manages to get a place on the swimming team, breaking the local record. Pierre is not very happy with the news about Eric's sporting successes. He immediately tells his friend that it won't end well for him, because the more he sticks out, the higher the chances of running into the wrath of the student council members. As if to confirm his words, Otto's messenger enters the room and demands that Eric immediately report to the high school students' building. Eric obeys, and Delane orders the newcomer from the doorway to scrub shoes for his entire company. The guy immediately refuses and leaves. The next day, Pierre can't believe that a friend dared to be so impertinent to high school students. He warns if Eric decides to fight with one of them, he will be immediately expelled, and in general it is always better to resolve conflicts peacefully. The next day, Dahlen specifically bumps his shoulder into Eric and demands an apology from him. The newcomer refuses to apologize, and in the evening he is ordered to appear in the ring. Pierre explains to a friend that there are high school students beating the guilty juniors. The task is to withstand as many blows as you can, and then beg for mercy. You can fight back, but it's better not to even try, and if you don't come, then everyone will consider you a rat. Eric decides not to go anywhere, and late at night Otto's henchmen break into their room under the pretext of examining the room. They make a real mess inside, scaring Pierre half to death. The next day, Eric trains in the pool, and the mentor tells him that a championship will be held at the school on Christmas Day. It was founded by his father, one of the students, Levenhausen, and the victory of this guy is predetermined. Eric is demotivated, but the coach says that with his athletic talent, he still needs to try. At lunch, Otto announces that a meeting of the student council will be held in the evening and all the guilty students should come to it, including Eric, whom no one calls by name now, only a rat. The meeting looks like a real court. Eric runs into Chairman Otto and refuses to apologize for getting 2 weekends of forced labor and 8 weekends under house arrest. The first weekend comes, which Eric devotes to forced labor. Dallin had prepared a task for him, to dig a small ditch alone. The guy performs the task even though a downpour begins, and when he passes it to high school students, he is given a new one to fill the ditch back. When Eric goes to the dining room for dinner, there is no one there anymore. A local Finnish employee named Maria serves him food separately. She shows kindness to the young man and says that he is being treated unfairly. Once again, all the students leave for the weekend and Eric is left alone in the dining room. He meets Maria again, who flirts with him and says that at 7 o'clock she will walk near a secret smoking place. Eric arrives there at the appointed time, but he does not understand until the last moment. Why had the girl lured him here? She kisses the dumbfounded Eric and hugs him. The monastic night is coming, the time when newcomers especially get from the members of the student council. Eric prepares a plan for resistance in advance and barricades the door. He and Pierre guard the hooligans and do not sleep, but they do not save the strengthening from books and the table. Otto opens the door of the room and pours a bucket of sewage waste on the floor and beds. Barely coping with nausea, Eric and Pierre clean the room. After filling the bucket with the contents again, Eric goes to the high school building and while everyone is sleeping pours it right on Otto's face. At lunch, Eric publicly jokes that someone at the table stinks a lot. The guy gets up and approaches Otto sniffing. The high school student becomes furious and begins to beat the newcomer with all his might. Eric can't answer him. His hands are tied behind his back. He is about to lose consciousness from the blows, but Maria intervenes and the director comes to her cry. Otto stops. The day of the swimming competition is coming. Eric wins in all disciplines. The last line remains in the 300 meters. The coach walks into the locker room and tells Eric that he has every chance to get ahead of Levenhausen. The mentor promises that if he wins, no one will touch him and vows to take care of it. Eric wins the race and sets 3 records for the championship. He is an absolute winner of the tournament. On Christmas Eve, Eric finally arrives home. Mom praises her son for his excellent grades and the swimming cup, and the father does not even pay attention to them. Most of all, he is worried about the top 3. Eric tries to explain that he just didn't want to be an errand boy for high school students, but his father refuses to even listen to him. The guy returns to school where unpleasant changes await him. For some reason, Maria avoids him, and Otto and the company begin to dig into Pierre. Eric realizes that now the high school students have decided to change tactics and annoy his neighbor and even decides to quit swimming classes. Meanwhile, Maria directly tells him not to come to visit her anymore, but Otto and the company do not let up. One evening they catch Eric at the building and bring him to the room where his friend is standing naked. Dallin mocks him, threatening to put out a cigarette butt on the guy's chest. Then Eric volunteers to be punished for his friend and Dallin puts out a cigarette butt on him. The guy does not make a sound despite the hellish pain. Pierre is ordered to get dressed and an appointment is made for him in the ring the next day. Eric tries to dissuade Pierre from going to the ring, but he is determined to fight Otto and stand to the last. Friends quarrel, but Eric still comes to watch the duel. It all starts promisingly. Pierre hits Otto right in the face, but from such impudence the opponent becomes furious and beats Pierre almost to unconsciousness. Despite this, the guy refuses to beg for mercy. Eric looks at it with tears in his eyes and leaves. Later, in the room, he promises Pierre to deal with Otto and stop his bullying. But for now, Otto switches back to Eric. At first, as part of forced labor, he is ordered to drive 4 pillars into the ground to install a table. But closer to night, Eric learns that these pillars were intended for him. Hooligans tie the guy with ropes, and then pour buckets of hot and cold water. He remains alone on the street, risking freezing to death, and after a while Maria finds him there, who takes her lover to her room and nurses him. Returning to his room, Eric finds a letter from Pierre. In it, a friend writes that he decided to leave school and asks not to hold a grudge against him. Pierre calls Eric his only friend and the guy cries from loneliness and frustration. After Pierre left school, the biology teacher who adored Pierre accuses his best friend of inaction and cowardice. Eric's patience ends. He decides not to care about the risk of expulsion from school and scores an arrow to Dallin and another big guy from Otto's entourage. The high school students are elated. They think that the so-called rat will finally be able to lift the lesson. But Eric does not look scared at all. On the contrary, he is very confident and promises to tear opponents to shreds. Otto sees how good Eric is in hand-to-hand combat and is clearly scared. But instead of humiliating the leader of the Hooligans in front of everyone, Eric just silently leaves the ring. He goes to the staff building and asks to call Maria. Some woman from the kitchen informs him that the girl was fired 3 days ago for misconduct. The mail is distributed to the students and Otto's henchman notices that Eric has received a letter from Finland. The high school student immediately goes to the guy's room and takes the envelope from him. The bully reads the message from Mary publicly. The girl writes that Eric should not worry about a possible pregnancy because she took all precautions and confesses her love to the guy. On the same day, Eric is called to the director's office, who informs the guy that he has no other alternative but to immediately expel Eric without taking exams. The guy does not argue with the decision of the head of the school, only asks to return the letter from Maria to him. The director refuses and advises Eric to just forget about the existence of this girl. Less than a day remains before leaving home, and Eric decides to teach Otto the last lesson. He tracks down high school students in the woods, far from school, when he walks with a horse and forces him to kneel. The bully has nowhere to run and Otto starts offering Eric money. The guy replies that he does not need money. He begins to describe in colors how he will kill his enemy, take his ring and knock out his teeth, and no one will identify him. Otto becomes hysterical. Eric leaves, leaving Otto sobbing on the ground. He collects his things and remembers that he has a lawyer's business card with him. He promptly arrives at school. Eric comes to the local teachers' meeting and presents to the director that he violated the law of Sweden, where the right of a citizen to personal correspondence is clearly enshrined. The director still refuses to return the letter, and then a lawyer comes out from behind Eric's shoulder. He says that he just talked to a familiar reporter and he listened to Eric's story with great interest, and now he wants to come to the school for an excursion. Teachers start fussing and asking questions. The director understands that he is in deep trouble and agrees to cooperate. A few months pass. Eric graduates from school. He comes home with excellent grades that guarantee him admission to any college in the country. But his father is dissatisfied again. He is not satisfied with the behavior assessment and the novel that Eric started in boarding school. He orders his son to go to his room again. But this time everything is not going as usual. Eric threatens that in half an hour his father will be in the hospital because all his arms and legs will be broken. At the hospital, he will have to say that he fell down the stairs. And if he tries to involve the police, Eric will immediately tell them everything that Mr. Ponti has been doing with his family all these years. The father looks at him dumbfounded, and it seems that fear runs through his eyes for the first time. Some more time passes. Eric comes to visit Pierre and finds out that he is going to study in Geneva, and Eric himself gets a job at a law firm. So far he is only a courier there, but from now on his main dream is to become a lawyer and protect the world from injustice. Friends shake hands and agree to meet again sometime. Have you ever had situations at school when you had to defend your principles and protect your friends? Share stories in the comments and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Here we retell only the most fascinating movie stories.